All right. Hey, folks. So we are here for the February Q&A, even though it's March. If you've not seen one of these before, basically I go through some questions that I receive on Instagram, YouTube, DMs, various posts around social media. And I do one roughly every month. Ends up being about 3 or 4 parts just because there's a lot of questions, which is great. And so the quality of questions here was fantastic. They continue to improve. People ask some really good questions. And I encourage questions about diet, training, recovery, life, whatever you want my opinion on. So we'll start with the questions on Instagram and we'll go from there. So first one from Bash is, what are your thoughts on fancy intra-workout drinks? Okay. Now, in general, I'm not a massive fan of supplementation unless it's health focused. I think far too many people reach for the intra-workout drinks without considering health first, you know. So, and what I mean by that is, if you're missing something in your life which is making you feel tired, then that's worth fixing first. And to do that, you'd need a blood test, like maybe some sort of analysis of your diet to make sure you're not missing any nutrients. That's generally the angle I look at things first. I think a lot of people are walking around with without appropriate electrolyte levels, so they're poorly hydrated, so they're cramping up, they're not very alert, they're tired going into the sessions, their sleep is off, and they take a intra-workout as a kind of a band-aid solution. But if they just plug the gaps in what are actual health issues first, then they'd get far better results. So that's my general thought on it. I tend to want to fix people's electrolyte levels first. That fixes the hydration. After that, we look at things like calcium, magnesium levels. Those tend to be a lot more useful than focusing on an intra-workout, which is just going to blanket over things. So I think, you know, after you've sorted out your macros, the second tier of minerals which are going to make a difference is sodium and potassium. Just general USDA guidelines are pretty good in this respect. So sodium at about 2.7 grams. Potassium off the top of my head is 4.7 grams. That is dietary and supplemental. And if you're eating a diet which is mostly whole foods based, then and minimally processed, you're probably going to hit those numbers fairly dead on. Just a lot of fruits and vegetables with minimal amounts of meat, fish, all that kind of stuff. You'll get enough. But if you want to make sure to be a bit more exact on that, there are apps like Chronometer, which tend to be quite exact for these things. That's where I would start, you know. Then after that, calcium, magnesium tend to be the next tier of importance. And calcium at about 1 gram, magnesium at about half a gram tend to be pretty good guidelines, which are USDA approved. So that's kind of what I resort to. Magnesium, I actually take a little bit more than that. I supplement with about half a gram, and then I have about half a gram through food. So I end up with about 1 gram of magnesium, which I think is a better range for hard training athletes. Anyway, that's kind of where I would push people towards first. And then after that, a blood test to determine other things which might be deficient, like vitamin D, vitamin B12, fish oils tend to be quite useful. Getting all that into check first usually pays dividends. Like, people ask me why I don't take intra-workout, is because I get all that stuff and I feel great. Like when it's time to work out, I'm ready to go. So I don't necessarily feel like I need an intra-workout, not even a coffee. I just feel like my health is optimized, so I'm ready to train. Yeah, so I'd start with that. Then after that, if you need something else, maybe look at an intra-workout. I think caffeine is probably the strongest thing to take. After that, you're looking at sort of things which are like virtually nitrates, you know, things which encourage NO production in the body, like beta-alanine, I think is, or L-arginine, stuff like that. It just enables the blood vessels to get larger and allow blood flow. So I think stuff like that's okay. I'm not like a massive fan of pre-workouts, intra-workouts. I tend to feel people who focus on intra-workouts don't have a lot of the basics in place first to take advantage of it. Even the most dedicated bodybuilders, you know, there are things which are amiss. And most of the bodybuilders that I know don't take stuff like that. They just get their nutrition on point. And that kind of stuff is a nice added extra, you know, if it's going to benefit them. For a lot of guys as well, the intra-workouts tend to give a sort of placebo boost. Like one guy I know years ago, he said he used to like taking BCAAs during a workout because it would give him a buzz. There's nothing in BCAAs which is going to give you a buzz. In fact, they're provably useless. It was all in his head. Simple lad. There you go. I think there's a lot of that. So a lot of it's sort of placebo effect. So yeah, I don't think much of intra-workouts. Now, I will say there are a couple of circumstances where intra-workouts can be useful. So in very large, very hard training bodybuilders, like I have a couple of guys on the books who are 110 kilos, 120 kilos. These are big boys, right? For them, they run through a lot of calories per day. And that's when intra-workouts become valuable as another source of where to ingest calories. For some guys, their calorie requirements are so high, they could be eating all day and still need more food. And for those guys, I'm probably going to recommend intra-workout because it's a good time to eat carbs. It's a good time to eat food. A nice carb drink with a bit of protein, maybe some creatine in there, is going to be useful. But most people don't fit into that paradigm. Most people fit into the paradigm of trying to manage the food intake over the course of the day so they don't overdo it. If you're one of those kind of people, I think you really have to question your use of intra-workouts. I wouldn't allot calories intra-workout that could be placed elsewhere in a more filling, more nutritious way. Because bear in mind, most intra-workouts are fairly lacking in actual nutrition. It's just carbs or protein. So yeah, I think if you've got the calories to spare and a lot while still taking care of your health, and if you are not missing any vital vitamins, minerals in your diet, and you've proven that, then cool, it's useful. But that doesn't describe many people. So hopefully that gives you my view on intra-workouts. Okay, B. Monty says, hello Faz. For health purposes, even if training purely for aesthetics, aka non-competitive bodybuilding, would you say this is still very helpful for longevity health-wise? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, I am firmly of the belief that weight training is one of the best things you can do for your health. And that includes for heart health, for everything. I think it's one of the best things you can do. To fight the type of chronic disease that we are exposed to in today's modern society, which is usually a result of overeating and inactivity, weight training is some of the best thing you can do. I did a video a while back where I said, we were right, like the lifters were right, and we are, and I still fully believe that. The bigger your muscles are, the more they act to be a sink for the food you eat, particularly the glucose, which means it's anti-diabetic, it protects against heart disease. It's a lot better for your health to be lean and jacked. It's always better. So yeah, strength training for the purpose of aesthetics is fantastic. I don't feel like there's anything bad about that whatsoever. I think it's always a net positive. And I also think if you train with relatively high volume, in a fairly sort of fast-paced way, your heart's going to get a good workout too. Like, as you guys know, I've been doing a lot of running recently, but I'll tell you what's interesting. It's never my heart or lungs which give out when I'm running. Some people just go, oh, they're just done. For me, it's not that. It's always physically how far I can go, or like my knees, or just my gait, my lower back. So week by week, the thing which caps my performance isn't my heart and my lungs, because I've got 20 years of lifting under my belt. My heart and lungs are strong. It's always like my joints or my back, my knees, blah, blah, blah. So I continue to improve week in, week out, and I'm really enjoying it. It's great. But it's because my joints are getting stronger from the running week in, week out. What's limiting me is not my heart and lungs. So yeah, that's proof right there for me that lifting will do a lot for your heart and your lungs. I think that's great. That's great proof, personally. I think running is fantastic. I do. I still think you should do it. I think everyone should do some cardio. But I think lifting does a great deal for you. A common schedule that I have with a lot of guys is use anywhere between 3 to 5 lifting sessions per week, depending on how much they enjoy lifting weights, with about 2 to 3 cardio sessions. That tends to work quite well, or 1 to 3 cardio sessions, depending on your schedule, where you place importance on lifting versus cardio, what your goals are. Me personally, I will weight train in the gym about 4 or 5 days a week, and I'll run probably once. And that for me is enough to continue to improve on everything without overdoing any one area. So I think lifting for aesthetics is fantastic. It's great. I don't necessarily feel that cardio is an absolutely essential additive, and I can fairly confidently say that. I think if it was, then I would have seen. I probably would be doing it at my age, but I enjoy it. I enjoy the challenge, but I also get a tremendous amount of cardiovascular benefit just from my weight sessions, because I'm not doing slow, heavy powerlifting sessions. I am really pushing. I'm doing a lot of work in the gym. So I think you got to have strike a balance. If you know full well your gym sessions are a little bit on the slower side, they're more kind of power based, it might be wise to include some cardio, particularly if you're on the older side. But like you said, B Monty, if you're focusing mostly on aesthetics, then you're probably going to be using a fairly high volume in a hypertrophic range with a lot of the compound basics. You're going to get a lot in there. I would definitely still add in maybe 1 or 2 days of cardio per week, just because it's good to be able to move in a different way. I think you're probably not going to get as much from the cardio as some people might make out, though. That's all I'd say. I feel you're getting a lot from your lifting sessions. As I say, if your lifting sessions aren't that cardiovascularly demanding, then you may find additional benefits from specifically running. I personally don't find that much. I just like having the ability of running. Okay, moving on to the next question. Richard says, hi Faz, still loving the Wizard. Richard's been on the Wizard Pro routine for a while, which is fantastic. I wanted to add in some seated calf raises. I wanted to know the best way to fit them into my program. Any info on sets and reps and frequency would be appreciated. Many thanks, love the channel. Yeah, Richard, I do a variation of the Wizard routine myself, and I generally add the seated calf raises on my light days. So I have 2 light days per week, and I'll do the seated calf raises on the light days for high reps. The reason being, they're less axially loading. So if I'm doing standing calf raises, I'm usually under the calf raise machine. In my gym that I train at, there's a pendulum squat machine which doubles as a calf raise. And so it places load on the spine. I don't really want that for a light day, because the light day is when I'm trying to reduce stress on my body. It's kind of a recovery day. So I will include the seated calf raise on a light day for higher repetitions, so that it's less systematically stressful, less axial loading, less loading on the spine. And that's generally when I would do it. And I generally do it for about 3 sets of 15. Yeah. So, and that for me, that works out to be a couple of times a week. I will superset that with some abs just at the end of my workout. In fact, I did that today. So that's how I would do it. And then on the other days, you can focus on standing calf variations or straight leg calf variations, donkey calf raises for slightly lower reps, maybe in the 12 range. But that's how I do it. Okay. So thanks for that, Richard. Now, Frank About Fitness says, how long should it take to build notable muscle and size and strength for the natural lifter? It's a good question. Yeah, it's a really good question. I think if we focus less on time and focus more on weight gain, it'll probably give you a better answer. Because I could say, a year, I could say 3 years, but it very much depends on what you're doing in that time. So I'll give you my example. When I first started training, I was very overweight. When I started training, I weighed about 20 pounds heavier than I weigh right now. And I was like a 17-year-old kid, And what I did in that first sort of few months, I dropped about 45 pounds of fat. I just worked out like a madman, just running a lot. Probably, I was going to say burnt off muscle, but I didn't have any muscle anyway. I was just a kid. So I did some minor machine lifting, but I mostly just dropped fat in that first 6 months. And then my first proper year of training, I gained back about 40 pounds. Of which I would guess half was muscle. So I gained, in that first proper year of lifting, I gained probably about 20 pounds of muscle. Now, is that going to be suitable for everyone? Doubt it. People say 20 pounds, you should be gaining about 20 pounds in your first year. How many people actually do that? It's unlikely. Very few people I know do that. If I've got a new client who's starting fresh with me, that's what I'm aiming for. In fact, I have a couple on the books now. Shout out to you beginners on the books now, if you're listening. And that's the aim for them, is to get them up to speed as fast as possible, encouraging weight gain, diet quality, all that kind of stuff, to gain a maximum amount of muscle mass over the course of the first 50 weeks. Does everyone do that? No. But if you can do that and gain a lot of strength, then you'll gain a ton of muscle. So by the end of that first year, because I'd gained so much weight and I was so focused on poundage progression, I was benching almost 2 plates, about 90 kilos, squatting about 3, deadlifting close to 4. So it was a very good year. And people might say, well, you're an easy gainer. But I gained 40 pounds of weight, of which I would say half was muscle. I was young, I was stress-free. I was injury-free. It was a great time to gain. It's perfect. I was 18. So is that going to be typical for everyone? No, but could they gain 40 pounds over the course of 3 years, of which half is muscle? Sure. And if, in fact, you could probably make that leaner as well. You could probably gain a little bit do a cut, gain a little bit, do a cut. It really depends on weight gained. I think, it's physically possible to gain 20 pounds of muscle in that first year. I know because I've done it, and I think that would exponentially drop off as the years go on. So your second year, you might gain like 3 pounds, 5 pounds. The next year, another couple of pounds, and then just pound. That's kind of how it was for me, So but I think it's a case of how much strength and weight are people willing to add on. And I say willing because it's under your control. So that's kind of my experience and my thoughts on it. Now, in terms of caveats to that, I will say I've experienced different rates of muscle gain for different populations. And I'll also say this, where you start doesn't really indicate where you're going to end up. Like, I did not look like a lifter. I cannot understate how unathletic I looked when I first started. I know everyone says that, but like really, like I had absolute D-tier genetics when I first started. Like it looked like I had anyway. I was not only under muscled, but I was also fat at the same time. It's like the worst combination. You get all these skinny guys who go, "Oh, I got such bad genetics," and they're like 15 years old with abs. Like, I wish. I was fat and under muscled. Like, it was terrible. So I didn't have the best genetics, but I did a lot of things right, and I continue to do a lot of things right over the course of the year. So your starting point does not indicate what your potential is. So that's how quick you go up, and doesn't indicate your end point either. So it's a good question. I would say it depends very much on how much weight you're willing to put on, how well you put on that weight with regards to how strong you get while you're putting on that weight. I think you can make the weight generally better and cleaner if you incorporate, fat loss phases, which is what I eventually did. But it really depends on how much you're willing to put out in that first year. I'm not sure I would recommend anyone to put on 40 pounds in a year. I think that's a lot. But you got to bear in mind, like, I was a kid at the time. I didn't know a great deal about nutrition. I just lost 45 pounds. Now, yes, I ballooned back up again on purpose, but I was doing it with the intent of putting on as much muscle as possible, and it worked really well. It wasn't the most clean weight, but if you saw me before, just a fat slob at 6'17", and saw me afterwards at 18 or 19 with a lot more muscle on my frame, it looked like a different person. But I think it's more down to weight gain. Hopefully that was a reasonable answer. It's more down to weight gain and strength gain, but the body is capable of a hell of a lot. Okay, Bash said, can you rank intensity techniques for us, i.e. drop sets, rest pause, supersets, giant sets, force reps, etc.? Thanks in advance. Yeah, good question. Okay, as a whole, I'm not a fan of intensity techniques, Bash. And the reason is, in my experience, it's hard enough for clients to execute one straight set with good intensity. It's hard enough to do that. If you add a bunch of stuff on, like a drop set, a superset, because they're all ways of extending the set, right? If you add a bunch of stuff on, what you're effectively doing is you're telling them, look, you've got this set to do, and as soon as you're finished, you've got to do something else. When they see that, a lot of people will switch off mentally in that first set to preserve energy to do the subsequent sets. I see this time and time again. So the purpose of adding in intensity techniques is to increase stress on the muscle and to increase intensity. Done the way most people do them, it actually decreases intensity. I would rather somebody go balls to the wall on one set rather than overload them with all these intensity techniques, because with the assumption that they're going to get more intense, because in most cases they get less intense. So I'm not a big fan. I think the assumption is you add an intensity technique on, like you add in a drop set, a rest pause, it's going to be harder. It's not always harder, because a lot of people will just wuss out on the first set. Like subconsciously, they will. You see it. They're not going to go all out. Like if you know within 30 seconds, you've got to drop the weight and do another set, or you got to rest for 15 seconds or 10 breaths, whatever it is, do another one, another. You will, 9 times out of 10, you will hold something back on that first set. That's why I don't like intensity techniques, because the intent is to create more intensity. The result is often they create less intensity. So I would rather somebody just do a straight set. Now, where I do think there are some applications which are useful. So for example, I like cluster sets. Now that's a nice technique, because you can focus on getting excellent form. Let's say, for example, you're going to do let's say I want you to do 50 total reps. Okay, so you'll do lat pull downs, okay, as a sample exercise, 50 total sets. And those reps, the 50 total reps, 50 total reps, all of those reps need to be perfect. So I would say to you, do lat pull downs with X amount of weight. You're going to do every rep completely perfect. And at the point where the rep quality drops off, you'll stop the set, you'll rest 30 seconds, and then you do another set. That is a nice way of adding an intensity technique, because you're not ruining the strength, but you're not ruining the form of the reps. You're getting nice, clean, quality reps. There is no predetermined set count. There's no predetermined when you stop, when you end. There's no failure point. You're just focused on getting clean, quality reps condensed in a cluster. So that's a very good technique I like to use. The other technique that I like to use is I'll do the superset, where the second exercise is something with body weight, and I don't track it. This is a good psychological trick. So if I say to you, you're going to do leg presses, and you're going to progress on leg presses every week, and as soon as you finish your leg press sets, you're going to go and do walking lunges. But I don't care about the walking lunge, okay? I just want you to do them. Psychologically, I found people will focus on the leg press and they'll beat their PRs on the leg press, and then they'll just jump on and they won't think about it and go do the walking lunges to failure. That is a lot more easily palatable than having a target for the walking lunges or whatever the exercise, sissy squats, whatever it is. If you say to someone, I want you to do the leg press, then I want you to do the sissy squat, and you're going to beat both of those numbers and write them down, it's a lot harder for them to do that psychologically. This is just what I've experienced. It's more to focus on. They've got to focus on the leg press. They've got to focus on a sissy squat. But because they've got something to beat on a sissy squat, they're not going to go all out on the leg press. Do you see what I'm saying? So if I'm doing a superset, what I'll do is do the leg press, track the leg press, ignore the sissy squat. That works. Another way that I do it is rest pause, but don't track the pauses. Don't track the subsequent sets. Track only that first set. So let's say you're going to do, I don't know, hammer strength chest press, because I know you have one at your gym, right? You'll do that for the first set of 12. You're going to do 3 sort of subsequent sets, okay, because there's rest pause. 3 more rest pause sets afterwards. So I just want you to track that first set. Then rest 30 seconds, go to failure the next set, go to 30 seconds, go to failure and failure again. Don't track the other 3. Just track the first set, but do the other 3. It takes a lot of the pressure off performance, and you just place the pressure on that first set where you can use that as a determinant of whether you're getting stronger or not. Don't track the others. Again, it's all psychological. These techniques are fine, but they'll screw you if they distract you from your main set. So that was probably a longer answer than you were expecting, but like that's, in my experience with training people and myself, these are the tricks you have to sort of employ to make sure that people aren't killing off their first sets. Okay. Right. So next question from Callan is, what are considered average strength genetics? Average is bench 3 plates, squat 4, deadlift 5. That's average. It's very average. That's very average. I've said it time and time again. And the more time I spend on YouTube, the more time I spend coaching people, the more I believe that people really, really undershoot the strength levels. I did a Twitter post about this, so I'm going to put up my Instagram at some point. The more that the fitness community grows, the more it becomes increasingly evident there is no reasonable natty limit. There never was. The standards have increased over time massively. Back when I was at my strongest, a 3-plate bench was considered to be a very, very strong strength standard. Nowadays, every Tom, Dick, and Harry online is doing it. And you can't say they're all on drugs. It's just not true. If we look at the differences between sort of strength levels in the tested versus non-tested federations, they're not actually that different. The drugs are very good for size, but not as good for strength. And that might blow the mind of some of the natty people, but it's very true. There's not much difference. So in terms of average strength genetics, yeah, 3, 4, 5, still very, very average for sure. And as standards improve, as training practices improve, as we know, it's better and better just to aim for small, consistent strength gains over time. You can get those strength gains, keep them, bank them, get them, bank them. And over time, you don't have to stop getting stronger. I think, there's so much good information out there. There's so many good coaches out there who are relaying great information. You got my ebooks that I've written. There's all detailing what I did. Like, you got a ton of information. We didn't have all that when I first started. There was a few guys benching 3 or 4 plates, and people thought they were gods. Like, nowadays, everyone's doing it. You've got guys out there who are benching 4 plates, squatting 5, pulling 6, and they're coaching guys who are benching 3, squatting 4, deadlifting 5, and it's very standard practice now. So your average strength genetics 3, 4, 5, and I just wish that people would open their eyes and believe they can do it. And people often say, like, am I too old at 40? No, you're not. Plenty of time. I think you've got to manage your health better at 40, because you don't want to do what I did at 17 and just gain 40 pounds. It's clearly not good for you, but it's possible, slow and steady. For those guys who are 20, 25, 30, you've got plenty of time. Get involved, keep banking those strength gains every month, and yeah, you'll get there for sure. And you'll get far more than that as well. Something happens when you get to 3, 4, and 5 that it's almost like you realize the effort necessary. And I mean that in every sense, like diet, training, to progress further. And you just keep gaining strength. Like, I've got a guy on the books now we're building him up to the 4-plate bench, 5-plate squat, and 6-plate deadlift. He came to me already advanced lifter. He came to me with a 3-plate bench, 4-plate squat, and 5-plate deadlift. Getting him stronger hasn't been that difficult because he already knows what it takes. He trains like a beast. There's nothing polite about the way this guy trains or the way he eats. He knows he's an animal. Getting people up to the 3, 4, and 5, teaching them how to train like a beast. Once they've got that, it's very difficult to stop them at that point. They become a lot easier to coach. You're just basically managing their prehab at that point. You just let them fly, put them on a good routine, keep them safe, do all the prehab, keep them injury free, and it's not because he's anything special genetic wise. It's because he knows how to push. Like, I watch this guy train. He's a madman. It reminds me of me when I was training really, really hard. Like, that it reminds me of that. You see these guys who are super strong. The intensity that they train at is insane. And I think that's what you get when you're past a certain strength level, when you hit that 3, 4, and 5, which makes the 4, 5, and 6 a much greater possibility. So yeah, I think average strength genetics about 3, 4, and 5 or equivalent. And I think a lot of that is down to mindset. So when you see people in the comments who go, I couldn't possibly do that, I'm too short, or my wrists are like this, it's like, yeah, you're not going to do it. Like, I'm sorry, you're not, because your attitude's all wrong. And it shows. If you are committed enough to mediocrity to reply back in the comments to say, yeah, I can't do 3, 4, and 5, then you don't stand a chance because you don't really believe it. And I think, and which means it's going to affect every aspect of your doing what's necessary. So yeah, that's a big thing. I mean, I know this is not directed at you, Callan, because I know you're built like a tank. So you do great. But I think you can, whenever you talk about these strength standards, there are always a bunch of people who will come up in the comments and say, hey, you know what? No way I can do that. But you've already lost at that point. And imagine going to like college or university and stuff and just saying, yeah, I've enrolled in this course, but I do not think I'm going to get a top mark. You're already screwed. You're already going to do less. Now, I mean, I know from the analogy that I would give is like, I know from being a school teacher, like getting 3, 4, and 5 is a lot like passing your GCSE and A levels. Like, everyone can do it. It's really just a matter of effort. It's not a matter of intelligence at that stage. And sorry to burst people's bubble here, but like your GCSEs, your A levels, or like in America, your college and all that kind of stuff, that doesn't require a lot of intelligence. It requires effort and hard work. Intelligence only comes into play when you're aiming for like a doctorate or something like that. Like, that's when you require true intelligence, because you're actually creating original work. Everything up to that point, it's just work ethic, and learning stuff. It's the same with anything up to 3, 4, and 5. It's not genetics at that point. It might make it a little bit easier, sure, but it's really just a case of consistency and time. Yeah. So I really wish people would stop doing that, because as soon as they do, I just know you don't stand a chance. As soon as they write in the comments, say, you know what, it seems so, I don't think I'll ever get that. You're being unreasonable. It's too much. Or what are the strength gains for like short guys or skinny guys? I'm 160 pounds, I can't do it. Well, bloody get bigger then. That's the whole purpose, isn't it? You know, then equivalent strength gains for women as well, I think would be something like probably a plate and a half bench, and then possibly 3-plate squat, 4-plate deadlift. Mostly the bench is lower only because women's upper bodies tend to be smaller in structure. But other than that, the only reason the strength stands are lower is because women tend to be smaller. That's it. But you get a woman who's 80 kilos, you know, and there are some female bodybuilders around here at 80 kilos, and they look great. They're not fat, and they're lifting some serious weight. You know, it's really just a case of body weight. So women don't need to target any less poundages on a pound for pound basis. And that's where I would say, because ultimately a lot of women don't necessarily want to be that big at 80 and 90 kilos. So, you know, I generally think a plate and a half for women, about a 3-plate squat and about a 4-plate deadlift tends to be about right as a good strength standard. But yeah, don't shortchange yourself, guys, you know. And if you want to stay 160, okay, then clearly you don't care about strength standards. So stop worrying about it. Right, folks, hopefully that was a good Q&A, the first part of the February Q&A. I will put this out and I'll speak to you tomorrow for the next one. All the best. And thank you again for the questions. Some really good ones this week. All right. Peace out.